Hi everyone, I'm Kat Young from the Audio Lab at the University of York, and my presentation within this panel will discuss the gender diversity of presenters at AES conferences and some of the impact of attempts we made during the 2019 York conference to try and improve this diversity. A previous version of this data, covering the years 2012 to 16, was published in the IEEE Transactions on Education in 2018, but this presentation is an update to that data, including that to the end of 2019. Big thank you to my colleague Evelyn, who helped with a massive chunk of the analysis that I'm going to talk about in this presentation. I'm not going to talk about the methodology too much, it's all in the paper, but we used a series of steps to determine the gender of presenters, including directly asking them, any pronouns used in professional biographies, and a name database. We know this isn't the best way of determining gender, but in the absence of better demographic data collection within the AES currently, this was the next best thing. So with this new data, we looked at 5 different aspects: overall, by year, by topic, those topics over year, and the types of presentations over year. So overall, 87.89% of presenters were male. This is not hugely surprising if you've ever been to an AES conference, for example. And looking over the years, some years had lower percentages of male authors than others, and while analysis indicated a significant relationship between gender and year, there's no clear trend. We suspect it is just picking up some anomalies in the data. As with the previous analysis, a significant relationship was found between gender and conference topic, with the more applied topics such as medical, archiving and education showing a lower male percentage, and the more theoretical mathsy topics such as de-reverberation and sound control having a higher male percentage. The highest male percentage in this set was 95.5%, the lowest 74.8%. Now, the updates to this data mean that we could look at the changes in percent over different instances of the same conference topic. We just didn't have enough data to do this before. In the window 2012 to 2019, 9 conference topics had more than one conference. So on this somewhat confusing plot, the real takeaway is that there is no downward trend over the years. 3 conference topics are worth highlighting that have downward trends with more than 5% decrease, so this is music-induced hearing disorders from 80% to 78% to 63.6% male, AVAR from 90.3% to 82.3%, and sound field control from 97% to 90.7%. The others on this plot either drop in smaller steps or have trends that go down and then up, or have only occurred once. Now, while there was no significant differences across presentation type in terms of gender representation, this new set of data allowed us to look at the presentation type over year to see if any of these have got more diverse over time. Now, much like the previous plot of the conferences over years, the general takeaway is that there isn't much of a downward trend. Most of the 8 presentation types are jumping around above 80% male. There's one anomaly also in the 2018 demonstrations, which was due to one particularly diverse music-induced hearing disorders conference. There are some encouraging signs within here. The keynote percentage male has come down in the last few years after being 100% male for 4 out of the last 8 years, and panels have also started to show some signs of improvement. However, the AES conferences over the years 2012 to 2019 have not been particularly diverse in terms of gender. So let's talk a bit about the 2019 York conference. I was part of the committee for this conference, and we tried a number of different things to improve the diversity at the conference, particularly in terms of gender and accessibility. Some of our interventions included blind paper review, where neither the reviewers nor the authors knew whose paper it was or who had reviewed it. And we tried to find reviewers from underrepresented groups typically. We invited diverse keynotes and panelists, and we created an accessibility and inclusion FAQs document, including lots of information about the conference that isn't typically listed. And we had pronoun stickers on the badges. Now, at these events, we got some great feedback, and I'd love to share a few of them with you. I feel that talking so openly about efforts to increase gender diversity made for a more positive and inclusive atmosphere at the event. It feels good to recognise G&D awareness at such an event, a necessary step into the future. I've been to one other AES conference. The overall atmosphere and culture of this one was noticeably more open and inclusive. As a female member of the AES for almost 2 decades, I've never felt as welcome at an AES event as I did at this conference. The representation of keynotes, panels, and session chairs was so refreshing. I felt much more at ease and safer than I have done at other conferences. But what does the data say about IAA? Well, we had more diverse keynotes and panelists, as expected from the efforts of the committee, and this did translate into a significant difference between the invited presentations at IAA and all the other conferences. However, the overall percentage of males and the diversity among the other presentation types do not differ significantly from the other conferences, and indeed some of them are quite bad. With this, it's also interesting to discuss who is responsible for the diversity within certain types of conference attendees. The conference committee has control over, for example, who they invite to be a keynote or a panelist, but perhaps less control over the group of people sent by a sponsor. This was certainly the case for the group of people labelled as invited speakers at IAA, and is something we perhaps could have done more to try and address. The diversity of the submitted workshops, papers and posters at IAA were also discussed at the time, but these are much harder for the committee members to have a direct impact on. The lack of gender diversity within audio extends far beyond the conference remit. More work is needed in the wider industry too, so that diverse people are actually there to be able to submit to any conferences. So, to conclude, looking at the updated data for AES conferences shows that the gender diversity has not significantly improved over recent years, although there are some encouraging signs where explicit steps have been taken by committees. Looking at the 2019 York conference as a case study indicates that while conference committee members do have control over the diversity of some aspects of the conferences, this does not immediately translate into higher diversity across the whole conference. However, diversity should still be encouraged wherever possible, as it helps to foster an inclusive environment that people feel genuinely comfortable contributing their scholarly work to. Much more work is required to encourage diversity in areas of the industry away from conferences, which will then feed into conferences in the years to come. Thank you.